Welcome everyone to a webinar hosted by the EVC, your Equip Ministry team, Equipping Vital Congregations here at the Susquehanna Annual Conference. I'm a member of the team and have been for about 6 years. And I'm appointed tonight kind of to do this introduction because Lan is one of my dearest friends. And I had the pleasure to serve in ministry with Pastor Lan Wilson for back when he was simply minister, Lan Wilson, for 3 years at Crosspoint Church in Harrisburg. As you read from his bio when you signed up, Lan has been in ministry, a nearly paid ministry, since he was 10 as a worship leader. So when you get a resume from a 31-year-old guy who says since 1980 something or 90 something, we were like, how old is this guy? Come to find out, he started at 10. He has worked in nearly every type of church possible. He's supervised worship leaders who from every context, from traditional, blended, contemporary, coffee shop ministry. And now Landon serves on the staff of Greater New Jersey as their director of worship. He also is a newly approved deacons candidate in Greater New Jersey. So I'm going to turn it over to Lan, and he's going to focus on online worship and how to get quality from it. So Lan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to share you with all my other friends.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you, PJ. Everybody knows that it was very important to me when I was at Crosspoint. Though Jen is one of my dearest friends, that I recognize her first and foremost as my pastor. And so I call her PJ. Because she's still Pastor Jen to me and always will be. So thank you so much for having me. I miss Harrisburg and Central PA so much. And so I'm grateful that I get to spend some time with you all tonight. I'm kind of sad that we're in webinar view and I can't see your smiling faces, but I'm grateful that you all are here and so many folks are still coming in. And I want to get started tonight. Just get right into it. It looks like I do have screen sharing capability. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I was just texting with Nate and he was telling me that we're good to go with that. Just make sure I don't mess things up. There we go. No.
While Lan gets that up, I wanted to say, I forgot to say in his introduction as he works this out. So thank you for being here. This webinar actually came about from the EVC team being a part of the Both And webinar with Jason Moore and listening to your questions and concerns. The team had a meeting right after that and nearly all of the team was on board for that webinar and heard a lot of need for this series. So I hope that this meets your felt needs. Thanks, Lan.
Great. Looks like we're good to go now. Thank you so much again for being here. I'm sharing my screen, and if you for some reason can't see that, I'm more than happy to have you just kind of raise your hand or put something in the chat if for some reason you can't see my screen. But we're going to get started tonight, and as always, I love to get started right in with the word, and so that's where we're gonna kind of dive in tonight. Did I just mess up? We're having all kinds of problems with my screen sharing. This usually doesn't happen. You know what? We're going with route 2. Let's do that. There we go. So I want to get started tonight with just a little bit of the word and welcome you in and tell you just a little bit about me again. As Jen said, I am now in my 27th year of ministry, and I've served everywhere from the churches in the project. I grew up in a church in the country that had about 20 members. And have served mega churches in 7 different denominations, and I'm now serving the annual conference. I want to start tonight, though, with not a lot about me, but I really want to just get started with the Word of God, if that's okay. I want to start here in Philippians and start here in this 3rd chapter with the 10th verse that says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Not that I'm speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatsoever situation I am in to be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to be abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need, and I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, I want to just invite you as we get started tonight, no matter where you've been, no matter what you've been doing, what kind of church you pastor, what position you hold, whether you're the senior or associate, or whether you're a lay speaker on here tonight, a lay minister, or whoever you are, and whatever experience you've had in the last year or so of ministry. I know we have all faced challenges. We've all had to go through some new things and try and learn new things. But I want to encourage you tonight and just have you just say that out loud. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Just say that out. Don't even be embarrassed tonight. Don't be ashamed. I know sometimes as pastors, we're the cool kids and we don't participate in worship. But I want to encourage you to just say that out loud tonight. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This is the word of God tonight for the people of God. And together we say, thanks be to God. Let's go to God in prayer. Gracious and loving God, thank you so much for this opportunity to be able to share together, to be able to commune together in fellowship, to learn and to sharpen one another. But thank you, God, above even the task that's hand, thank you for this day that we've seen. I thank you that you're still with us, that you still hold on to us, that you still are shaping and molding us. Thank you for the gifting and call of every person that's on this Zoom call tonight. I pray, oh God, that through this time that we're sharing together, that you would begin to pour into us, that you would begin to lean into us and just open our eyes, that we might see, that we might do, and we might serve with greater excellence. At the end of the day, we're not trying to impress anybody else. At the end of the day, we just want to hear you say, well done, and we want to draw people unto you. And so we pray, oh God, that whatever we do, however we do it, that we do it to the best of our ability, and that we leave this moment with an attitude that it's still not about us. It's about you, that it's still not our church, but it's your church. And that all that we're trying to do is serve you in a better way each day. So we pray, oh God, that you would speak now to us, even as we talk about technical things and technicalities. We pray, oh God, that you would speak to us and allow us to hear your voice. Give us vision, direction, clarity, and energy for what lies ahead. In Jesus' name, amen. Friends, as we get started tonight, I believe, first of all, that we need to make good use of your time. And so I just want to kind of lay out what's going to happen tonight. And I'm so grateful that Cindy is here with us and Nate's here in case I make any technical issues. And so I want to just kind of lay out what our time is going to look like tonight. And the first thing I want to say is just some Zoom practices and just kind of lean into that. But before we get into that, just to lay out what our time is going to look like, we're going to talk about just some best practices for engaging in Zoom, talk about what is hybrid worship and why. That's one of the things we're going to lean into tonight. What is hybrid worship and why? The next thing we're going to talk about is good sound. Many of you have come here because the workshop is called Can You Hear Me Now? We're having sound issues in church. We want to talk about pre-recording and its benefits. I'm going to lay out some software recommendations and then we're going to lean into radical hospitality in the new day. We're going to lean into what it looks like to do radical hospitality in this new style of worship, in hybrid worship. So just some best practices, and I know we're in webinar mode, so just kind of forgive me with this slide because I didn't know I thought I was going to be looking at 68 of y'all on screen, but we're still going to do some things. If and when you do come on to speak, because there may be some questions that you'll put in the chat. And first, let me just say, I always tell people, if you didn't get what you needed out of a workshop with Lan Wilson, it's because you didn't ask the questions that you need answered. We all come from different contexts and different cultures, different backgrounds, different parts of the conference. And so if you didn't get what you needed tonight, it's because you didn't ask the questions that you needed answered. And I don't mean to say that to be a smart butt, but I'm saying that, just saying that just to make sure, I see in the chat too, just to make sure that we're all engaging and that you're getting what you need so that I can best serve you in this evening. So if should you ask a question in the chat, feel free to type questions anytime when I'm speaking in the chat. Cindy's helping us navigate through those so I don't overlook any questions. If I need clarity or if we need to engage, I may just ask you to be able to be unmuted. And so make sure that once you're done speaking, please mute yourself. I ask you to stay engaged tonight. If you're multitasking, and I know many of you are because this is the dinner hour and we have families and all that kind of thing, but do your best to try to stay engaged because I'm going to cycle through about 3 workshops worth of information tonight and open the fire hydrant just a little bit. So I ask you to just stay engaged. Write stuff down, take notes where you can. If you need to, just take a picture of the slide. I do that often. Just take a picture of the screen and use your, hey, look, Bill's popular tonight. Use your Zoom video feature. If you do come on screen, again, that doesn't always apply in this kind of thing. And when others are speaking, use the chat feature to ask a question. And so I want to lean right in tonight and just kind of dive right in to this topic of hybrid worship. What is hybrid worship? What is hybrid worship? Friends, as we're moving into this new season and as we continue on in the pandemic, whether you like it or not, whether we choose to accept it or not, there is going to be a continuation of virtual or online worship from now on. And that's just the truth. So hybrid worship is the combining of virtual and in-person worship. And so I want to ask you, how are you making it happen? And could you just do me a favor and let's just engage and interact for just a minute and pop in the chat and just tell me, just type just in a couple of words, how are you worshiping right now? I just want to kind of get a feel for the room. Are you worshiping in person? Are you worshiping only online? Or do you have a reopening schedule lined up, a reopening date lined up? Or something else? Just type in the chat. I see a whole lot of folks that are on here with hybrid. Keep on typing. We got virtual and live. Yeah, hybrid. That's good. That's good. That means y'all are listening too. This is the good way to see that y'all are actually paying attention to me. So thank you. Just starting back, that's doing both. Good. Wonderful. Thank you. And so we want to talk about why is hybrid necessary? Because a lot of people have had to make some changes all of a sudden because we've gotten into the pandemic and because churches were closed and we had to figure out how do we continue doing churches. But many of us just did what we could to get by, first out of survival mode, but then we've been holding on to that because we have some expectation that at some point we'll get back to just doing church and we won't need this stuff anymore. If you're one of those people, please let me assure you, my friend, tonight, that is not the case. That in order to keep doing ministry in this new world that we're living in, we will need to do hybrid worship. We will need to have an online presence. And so if that's going to happen, I just want to go over just a couple of things about what we need to know about hybrid worship. And this is something I lovingly like to call the gospel of hybrid worship according to Carey Nieuwhof and Lan Wilson. So this is a little bit of Carey, and he's not a friend of mine, but I do like to credit him when I use some of his writings, but some tips also from me as well. Carey is a very innovative person when it comes to kind of giving tips and things like that for what's going on currently in the church today. And I tend to try to do that as best I can myself as well. So I want to just leave you with some things that I call the gospel of hybrid worship, according to Carey and Lan. First things first is the majority of folks may no longer be in the room when you return to the sanctuary. I know you may be seeing low numbers now because we have capacity restrictions that are mandated by our state. But I want you to just kind of be aware of that even going forward, once the restrictions have been lifted, the majority of folks may no longer be in the room. You may have grasped an audience now that will never step foot inside your building because they've been accustomed and they've become accustomed to worshiping and connecting with the church via a screen. And so the next thing that we need to come to grasp is that growing churches will then shift their focus from gathering to connecting. A growing church in this new world of hybrid worship will shift their focus from the gathering to connecting. In other words, it's not all about the experience of when we get in the sanctuary, but we need to think about the experience of how do we create community and connect with people however they choose to connect with us. Content alone won't cut it. Community and connection will. Let me say that again. Content alone will not cut it anymore. But community and connection is what will continue to allow us to have growing churches in this new day. One other thing is that generational gaps, as you probably have seen in the last year as we shifted online so quickly, generational gaps will become clearer than ever. Many of us have probably had to have some form of service or some alternative form of worship for an older generation in our church that could not access technology somehow in some way. And so we had to be creative into how we did worship to make sure that we didn't lose sight or exclude the older generation. Some of us are dealing with that even in different cultural places. We're not cultural settings and social economic settings, where not everybody has access to internet. And so those kind of things become clearer as well. But we need to be aware that in this season that generational gaps are going to become clearer than ever. And if we want to continue to grow the church, then we have to be aware of these differences and these settings and situations that happen as we look at how we approach hybrid worship. People need easy, inviting, open access to worship. In other words, as we begin to move forward with this season and this new day of worship, we need to make sure that however we've been letting people access worship, that we need to think of every way possible that we can give people access to worship. What does that mean? It means if we're meeting via Zoom, then the Zoom link needs to be as public as possible. If we're meeting on Facebook, then we should be streaming from the church page, and that church page should be advertised, and our leadership of the church should be sharing that, not streaming from our personal page. It's quite easy, takes about 5 minutes to create a business page for the church if you haven't already, but we should be streaming from a church page, however we're doing that. People need access. If we're streaming only from the website, most people are not just going to happen up on your website on Sunday mornings. So we need to make sure that they have access to get that, and they're being invited to that via everything. The marquee out front, between our social media, between any kind of advertisement, any church publications, everything that's going on in our community, every way we can to make sure that people know how to reach us in worship. And this is specifically important in this day right now when we have capacities in our sanctuary. Because the last thing we want to do is have to get to a point where we're having to turn people away. We as Christians know what it means for somebody to show up somewhere looking for a place to sit or to lay their head, and we don't have room for them. We're not too long from Advent season, so I don't think I need to explain that, but we need to make sure that we have given people access to reach us. However, and I'll talk about some creative ways later on how we can do that, but I want to make sure we just kind of get that in your spirit and think about as we think about hybrid worship. The next thing is, as we're doing hybrid worship, many of us now have gone from doing just live streaming, however we were live streaming before, or doing online worship, however we were doing it before, to now most of us are doing hybrid worship where people are back in the sanctuary. And what's happening now is that there's some kind of voyeuristic, excuse the term if it offends you, but peeping Tom experience going on where there's a camera on the side that's just getting a glimpse of what's happening in actual worship. And the people in worship now are being ministered to directly, but the people on the camera are getting some kind of sideshow, like they're peeping in from outside. It's like walking down the street and you see somebody eating a pile of spaghetti inside a window, and you're just watching them eat as you go by. That's not the kind of hybrid worship experience we want to have. People need to have a direct line of sight when they're worshiping with us in hybrid worship. That also means that the people in person don't need to look at a camera or an iPhone on a tripod dead in front of your face while you're preaching and everybody else. And you're saying, because we're live streaming, people need to see us. We need to get creative and intentional about where that camera is to make sure that people have a direct line of sight. Next thing is we need to make sure that we're making every second count. Every single second in worship needs to count. That means we need to be mindful about turning the camera on and leaving it running for minutes and minutes ahead of time, because this does not help anyone. Tom Rainer writes in his book, Who Moved My Pulpit, which is one of my favorite books to teach out of, that one of the top 5 reasons that people did not return to a church is because something offensive or distracting happened in the 10 minutes before worship. And that's in person. So just imagine what's going on with some of us that are, just because we're multitasking on Sundays and we're turning the camera on. Even some of us, I've seen some of our larger churches that have, big camera setups and robotic cameras mounted on the wall and stuff. And we're turning the camera on and we're looking at all this fiddle faddle going on 20 minutes before worship. It's distracting, and it's going to make me keep scrolling when I'm looking for a church to connect with on Sunday mornings. So the next thing we need to do is trim the fat in worship. That means we need to cut out all of the extra stuff. Our order of worship, friends, should not look like it did pre-COVID. We need to trim some of the fat, especially if we're going to be ministering to a congregation that is both in person and online. If we're going to do both of those things, we have to trim the fat in worship. We can't keep going through all of the motions that we've been going through. One of my key things that I tell people all the time is that worship needs to be less ritualistic and more relevant, which means we can't just keep doing things because we've always done them, but regularly, and even I suggest quarterly, we need to be sitting down with the leadership of the church. And if you have a worship team or worship council at your church, or whoever is the decision makers for the Sunday morning experience in your church, we need to be sitting down with them and doing a regular assessment of the worship service. And you need to be getting opinions from people outside of that room, from people in the pews, from people online. I would recommend friends, other churches. Sometimes it's good. We've done that a lot of times, even my home church, where we'll ask the church down the street, hey, would you check out our worship service? And we'll check out yours and tell us what you see, and we'll tell you what we see. But we need to be more intentional about our order of worship. The next thing is, make sure your safe practices are showing on camera. As we think about trying to get more people back into the sanctuary and off the screen, we need to make sure that we are showing them a safe environment, that we're practicing safe practices, which means simple things like making sure that we're not passing mics from each other, from one person to another, unmasked without sanitizing them, to make sure that people in the pews, when they're not speaking, are keeping their mask on. We need to just think about all these kind of safe practices that we're seeing before communion, before you administer communion online, that the people are seeing you actually sanitize your hands. I know some of us are still dipping our hands in the sacred ritualistic bowl of water, the basin, but you need to pick up some Purell, baby, and sanitize those hands too before you just dip it in water and start handing people bread or even that disposable communion cup. We need to try to make sure we're showing safe practices on camera so that the family and the people in our congregation that are meeting online will feel comfortable to come back to us. The next thing is, we need to welcome. We must welcome people often. That means welcome people at the beginning of the service. Hey, you've come by the Fishburne United Methodist Church. Thank you so much for being here. If it's your first time with us, we're happy to see you, happy to have you with us worshiping online. Recognize the online audience, recognize the people in the pew. We're happy to have you with us. We would love to connect with you. Here's how. Halfway through the service, you need to say, thanks again. If you're just joining with us, if you just come in late, whether in person or online, we're happy to see you. Here's how to connect with us. Thanks for joining us. We'd love to chat with you later. At the end of the service, if you just come in sometime during the service and you didn't get to say hi, or we didn't get to say hi to you, thanks for being with us. I know it sounds repetitive, but people need to feel like that you recognize that they're there. One of the big things that differs us from our Catholic siblings is that we are a relational church. People don't come for a mass that is spoken unto them for 1 hour on Sundays. They want to be a part of a community. And we need to be intentional about how we approach that. The next thing is we need to help people follow along. In other words, there's several ways that you can help people follow along to keep up with what's going on in worship. If I'm a new person, I've just moved to the community, I'm checking the church out, whether it's in person or whether it's online, I want to know what's going on, and don't assume that I understand the United Methodist order of worship. I'm an average Joe that just moved here because my job relocated me and the wife says we got to go to church. I don't know the book of worship order. And so we need to make sure that whatever style or format of worship we're using, that people have some way to follow along, even if we just kind of lay it out at the beginning and say, hey, we have a simple service, a simple contemporary service. We just want to welcome you all. We're going to have a couple songs and then a prayer. There'll be a chance for you to give and then a message. Lay it out for them. If you have something to do for their kids, they need to know. Lay it out. We're going to have a children's message about 20 minutes into the service. Please stay tuned. We'd love for your kids to get going, to get involved in what's going on. If there's a bulletin, have a bulletin that they can download online. Don't just let the people in the sanctuary see the bulletin, but have one online that they can download and post a link in the comments that they can access that too. Because not everybody will have gotten the church newsletter this week. So make sure that we're giving them a way to follow along, and try to make sure that there are lyrics and liturgy on screen. If you can, if you have that capability. I know everyone doesn't have screens in worship, but try to make sure they have access to lyrics and liturgy. Some of us are still doing very traditional worship, and I applaud that. I come from a historic one. The last church I served before coming to Cross Point was a historic church, the fourth oldest Black congregation in the United States, very high church setting. We just got screens, and it was probably 2 years after we got the screens before we even used them. So I understand that situation, but even if that, we need to make sure the lyrics to music is in the bulletin so that they can follow along and people will know how to connect. So we need to give them every chance to be in community with us so that we're not just giving them an experience that they can view, but one that they can interact in. Any questions on that? Because I'm going to jump to the next topic, but I want to take a minute and just ask if anybody has any questions on anything I said thus far. And it doesn't have to be technical questions. It could just be, this is what we're dealing with. Can you just speak to that? And that's okay.
Lan, I have one question here from Dilip. He says he hopes you will give us some tips on how to help elderly population in my congregation to overcome their fear of technology and start being open to our Facebook broadcasts.
Yes.
That's more of a statement.
No, it's okay. And it's a real thing. It's a question. And we'll talk about some different ways too, as we go through the night. But that is one of the biggest challenges, because the average United Methodist congregation is mostly 55 and up. That's a realistic statistic for United Methodist. And so we are dealing with how do we get an older generation plugged in? And some people have done really well, and they say, hey, all our folks got tablets and Kindles. They did it. Not all of us are so blessed. And so in that case, with that regard, we need to think of some creative ways on how do we get the older congregation tapped into our live stream, because some of them from a health standpoint cannot and won't be able to come back to the sanctuary for some time now. Though there are some really creative ways to do that, some ways, and I'll just throw out some different things and you can just kind of grab what works for you. And some people are putting things, are going to put some things in the chat that we'll share as well. One way is I've done Zoom to Facebook. So rather than just doing a Facebook Live, I actually stream to worship via Zoom, or actually through a streaming software into Zoom as well as into Facebook. You can do that kind of one or two ways. And I'm happy to kind of answer in detail what that looks like, but either stream the worship in Zoom, and that way the older saints can call in and they can listen to worship if they can't come out. Another way, again, is to stream that from a streaming software and then have one of the outputs going into a Zoom call, and then they can also call in, but you're also streaming to Facebook. And then one of my other churches, they had a lot of folks in the church that donated Kindle Fires. You can get Kindle Fires for anywhere between 30 and 50 bucks these days on Amazon. And they literally had volunteers that went to several of these older folks' houses and helped them get set up on how to plug in to the worship. If you're seeing a large population of that, you might want to think about not streaming just on Facebook, but streaming to something like either YouTube or on the church's website, because most of them, if they don't have technology, they're not going to be able to access Facebook. And we don't want to pressure them to create a Facebook social media account just to watch our services. And so those are things we need to kind of think about. There's a lot of creative ways to do that. Some people I know are having a separate online service, and we'll talk about what that looks like later in the night too. Having just a separate online service, or I know some folks are having a separate teleconference service too. For folks that can't come but can also access technology. They have a large population of that. Here in Greater New Jersey, we have many people down in the Delaware Bay where there is no internet whatsoever. There's just no cable, no internet running to those areas. And so those folks are still meeting via telephone. Yes, I'm hearing that that you can watch a Facebook video without a Facebook account, but please understand, friends, that social media is a very intimidating thing for certain people in certain generations. So even introducing them to the requirement of having to access a social media, whether we're logged in or not, will be off-putting and intimidating for some of them. So let's think about also some alternatives. Alternatives to that. Again, sometimes it means just having technology classes. One of my churches, we had in our mission center once a month technology classes, and even now they could do it where people kind of sign up for times to come in, and a person would sit down with them with their phone or with their device, their computer, whatever it is, and just kind of help walk them through, hey, here's how you access things online. Here's how you find the church website. Here's how you register for a vaccine. Here's how you do those kind of things, and just kind of offer some assistance. This is an opportunity for ministry, and we have to get creative in making sure that we do everything we can to reach people the best we can. I hope that answered that question. If not, I'll just keep asking and I'll come back to it and say more about it later. Someone's saying, how do we deal with slow internet connections? If we're dealing with slow internet connections at home, sometimes the best bet is going to be for them to watch the replay and not just the live stream. We're dealing with slow internet connections in the church. That's going to be where we're going to want to make sure that we're talking to the cable company to make sure we have the strongest internet possible that we can get in there. Sometimes that's an investment, and we have to have conversations with councils about how do we increase that bill. Sometimes it means we need to make sure, often one of the easiest fix is that we need to make sure that we're not streaming via Wi-Fi, that we're getting some kind of direct connection, direct line connection from the router and modem into the computer that's streaming our service. That's going to be the best way to fix, the best and easiest way. But if you're already doing that and it's still slow, then we need to have a conversation and probably a visit from the cable company so we can figure out how to improve that. Yes, someone is saying they post on their website, but they're also doing a DVD ministry where they're still distributing DVDs, audios, CDs. Thank you so much for folks that are just adding those ideas. And that's what we do. That's how we sharpen one another. We just keep sharing those ideas. And so I'm going to move on and we'll come back to that. Thank you for asking questions. And hopefully I'll cover some of these. If you're asking questions and I haven't covered it yet, it's because I'm about to talk about it in a minute. And so we're going to keep going, keep asking questions. I love questions. So thank you so much. I want to shift gears here for a second into good sound. Many of you have come because we're trying to figure out how do we get good sound quality in our live stream. Common issues that people are having with sound in live stream worship. It sounds distant, sounds dry. It's picking up too much noise in the room, picking up too much white noise. There's humming in the live stream. Or it's hard to practice safety with using the microphones and things because we have limited equipment. What other issues are you all having with sound quality? So I can make sure we're kind of addressing some of those. Just pop that into the chat real quick. What issue, or into the question, what issues are you having with sound quality if it's not something you're seeing here on the screen? They can hear you breathing. There we go. Echoing. Thank you. Annette, yes, if you're streaming just as we're going through, I'm just going to double back and fix that, clarify that. Annette, what I was saying is if you're streaming from a computer, you want to make sure that you get a direct connection to your router, even if that means running. You can get, these days, you can get 100 feet of Cat6 cable from your router to the computer, wherever it is in the building. Because many times in many churches that I go in, the router is somewhere in the pastor's study or the business office, and that's a far fetch from the pulpit. So we're struggling to get good internet connection. You want to try to find a way to get that Cat6 cable, that Ethernet cable run from the computer, from the router all the way to the computer. Even if it means if you're doing modern computers, like I have a MacBook now and a Surface, and neither of them has an Ethernet plug, sometimes that means we just need to run a line into the sanctuary and put a router or a Wi-Fi enhancer in the sanctuary if we don't have those kind of plugins for our computer. Usually you can buy a dongle or adapter that will let you plug that in as well, though. I'm seeing that most people are having issues with pulsing noises, echoing. What else are we seeing here? Yes, lots of.
I was just going to say in the question part, we've got some people where the wireless mic drops the signal. Recapturing, capturing directional mic for the organ.
Okay, I'm seeing. Thank you. I'm seeing the Q&A now.
Oh, okay, great.
I forget we have two chat windows. So there we go. How to caption. Okay, there we go. How to capture organ music and a good directional mic for the organ. Yes. So the situation is with organs, for those of you that are dealing with actual real pipes, with real pipes or digital pipe organs or Hammond organs. If there's any of my gospel brothers and sisters on here, the situation is those instruments are built to fill a room. And so even if you have a pipe organ, obviously you're looking at a multitude of pipes in and around the sanctuary. If you're dealing with a digital organ, there are probably more speakers than you can count somewhere behind a screen or in a chamber or something connected to that. And so the best way to do that is have an area mic that's far from the organ, but midways through the sanctuary, they can pick it up just as if I was sitting halfway back in the sanctuary. You try to get that thing anywhere close to the organ, you are going to have an issue. Now, if you have a digital organ of any sort, there are usually outputs that you can connect that to the soundboard, and then you can then control that. Some of the newer, many of us don't, because most of us have organs that are at least 25 or 100 years old. But if you have a newer organ, it will have an output that will connect to your soundboard. Most of us won't, so then you want to get an area mic. Those are called omnidirectional mics, or just a choir mic. Most of us know them as choir mics, or some kind of cardioid mic that picks up area sound, and we want to have that about midways through the sanctuary, no closer than the first pew. And then we want to think about, and just write this down, you want to make sure that if you have that plugged into your soundboard, that you have some kind of limiter or compressor on there. And what that does is, what a compressor and limiter setting on your soundboard. And again, just look that up, look up the back of your soundboard and look up, how do we compress, how do we limit? What that does is, it says, if I scream at the top of my lungs, it's not going to let me get above this right here. Whereas it might sound like it's way up here, it's not going to let me get there. It's going to keep me right in here. And so that's how we control the organ from blasting out our live stream. But the best way is less is more there, because we want people to sing. And so we want to blow them out with that. My puppy's running in now, so I'm hoping he's about to be quiet. But we want to just kind of pull that back and make sure that we're getting kind of less more of a room sound and not actually a direct input sound with that. If I give you a treat, will you let me teach? Okay, here you go. Take that and go. I have a 5-month-old puppy who, whenever he hears me talking loud, he thinks I'm talking to him. And so, and I'll get into some more of that, but I just kind of wanted to address that question. I saw about 7 or 8 questions coming in about the organ, but that's the best way to do that. One of the easiest ways to get good sound quality in your context, whatever it is by having a direct connection for sound. Whether you're live streaming, and again, I'm going to try to cover just some kind of surface level things with sound, but please ask me your specific questions. Whether you're live streaming from just a tablet or phone, get a microphone that is made for your device. If it's just you in the sanctuary, you can just use a lapel mic that plugs into that device. I know some of us don't have major sound systems and setup. Some of us are still doing service from our cell phone or from our tablet. That's okay. I'm here for you too, okay? They have a device. If you can't find one that's made for your phone and you have some microphones in the sanctuary, this little thing is called an iRig. It's about $50. You can get it at Walmart, Best Buy, or Amazon, and it will plug one of your standard church microphones into your cell phone so that you can get a direct thing. And I'm saying this because I know many of us have elaborate sound systems, but some of us don't, and some of us are still doing the best we can with what we got. Amen. And that's what we do. If you have a digital soundboard in your sanctuary, what you want to do is make sure that you have a direct connection, USB connection from the soundboard to your computer. That's the easiest, best, surefire way to get a good sound connection, sound input, into your sanctuary, into the live stream, is having a USB connection from the digital soundboard that connects the board to your computer. You may or may not have to download the driver for the soundboard. With mine, I did not. It just plugged in and it recognized it. But with others that I've had before, I had to download a driver. It's free. You get it from the company's website, and then you're good to go. With that, again, you want to kind of make sure that you're being mindful of what's going into that, and you want to do some test live streaming to make sure that you're getting the sound that you want out of it, and do some tweaking. You want to do as much testing and tweaking before Sunday morning, before you start getting I think we all know we have our best critics are there on Sunday morning. So we want to make sure we test that all out during the week. If your soundboard doesn't have digital capabilities, then a simple USB interface like the one I have pictured here can connect the soundboard to your computer that you're running the live stream from. So all that's going to do is take either an XLR, which is kind of the microphone cord, or what they call a TRS, which is what looks like a guitar cable that's coming out of one of the main primary outputs of the soundboard to this interface. Again, this cost about $50. I usually don't recommend things that people, I try not to assume that people have money to spend, because I know we're on tight budgets, but sometimes we need these things just to get the job done. So this is a version of it like this that's $50. You just want to make sure that you're reading the reviews on these things, because some of them can get noisy. They'll give you some of that white noise or that echoing that we're talking about. So just kind of read into these reviews on these things. I don't want to endorse any particular one. This is a brand called Behringer, which I do use, but again, don't want to endorse it because you need to make sure that you're getting something that works for your context. So read the reviews on that. But the best thing you can do for your sound quality in your context is have a direct connection from the microphone to the computer or device that is live streaming. Anything less is going to get you mediocre sound quality. And one of the things that we need to make sure people can do is hear what's going on, and that there's not something distracting. With regards to some of the things that's going on with like white noises and things like that, that's where you want to make sure if you're getting white noise. I see some people are having some white noise that's coming into their live streams. That's where you want to make sure that nothing is interrupting the connection between whatever your sound device is, whether it's that microphone or whether it's your soundboard and the computer. Make sure that nothing is interrupting that. And then if you're still getting it, you want to just run across your soundboard and make sure, just kind of mute channels one by one, and make sure that we don't have any live lines laying around. So often we'll have a microphone line that's still plugged into the soundboard, laying somewhere around the sanctuary, or we have the soundboard too close to power lines. to too much electricity, and that's causing static in our sound connection. Sometimes it's a guitar cable. That was one of the biggest things I used to have. If Jen was still on here, she knows I used to tease her husband. He would unplug his guitar before I preached on Sundays, before one of us preached on Sundays, and lay the cable down on the floor. And then we'd hear that all in the live stream, and it would bother recording unless somebody muted it. So we need to make sure there's nothing, any of those kind of electrical sources can interrupt. Some of us are dealing with noise issues as far as echoing in the sanctuary. That's where we might want to think about trying to figure out what can we do to pad some of the echoing in the sanctuary. Some of us are saying because of social distancing, we're live streaming from the gym or some multi-purpose room in the building. We want to try to figure out what we can do to add, even if it's some makeshift acoustic paneling, some of the foam squares you can get from Amazon pretty cheap, or just some kind of acoustic paneling that's going to swallow up some of that echo and keep that. Even if you have drums, sometimes it's not always speaking voices that you're getting the echo from. Sometimes it's coming from drums in the sanctuary, our instruments. Sometimes the bass pedals on the organ are doing that. Any kind of padding on the walls or ceiling in the sanctuary that's made to be acoustic absorbents can help fix that and kind of help alleviate that echoing problem. If it's something that's coming specifically, like when you're speaking and things like that, that's again where we can alleviate that by making sure, one, that we have a direct connection to the computer when we're live streaming, so that people aren't getting just a secondhand sound, because sometimes people are getting echoing because the computer's picking up noise from the main speakers in the church and not a direct connection from our microphone. So we want to make sure that's going on. If you're still getting something else, one of the other problems could be that we have reverb settings on the soundboard that need to be turned off. Some kind of sound effect or reverb on mics. Those are wonderful with very, very, very small portions. If you're hearing too much echoing, they might be up too loud, and we need to dial that back a lot. Sometimes sound guys or sound folks like to give a more realistic feel to our speaking voice, and so they'll add some reverb to it. But less is more when it comes to that. Less is more when it comes to that. If you already have all this going on, if you already got this kind of soundboard and things, some things to think about our worship engagement. So to make sure that sound doesn't feel dry, sometimes we're looking at the live stream, or we're sitting in service because of social distancing, and we don't have the choir singing like it used to. Excuse me 1 second. You've got to get the squeaky toy from them and just take them in another room, please. Sometimes we're trying to do things and it feels dry in the sanctuary because the choir is not singing, or we can't have the band up like we used to, those kind of things. This is where it helps to have somebody reading the responses to any liturgy that we have going on. Just to change things up, invite some other voices into worship. Lessen the transition time and unnecessary noises between worship components. I don't want to have to hear, people don't want to hear you unclipping your lapel mic, or having the mic on while we're sanitizing it between speakers, all that kind of stuff. Make sure we're not distracting folk. If there's a live audience in the sanctuary, then have a live mic that can pick up singing and liturgical responses, amens. Your live mic in the pews will also help. That's the one that also is going to pick up the organ sounds. Those kind of things can help pick up any congregational or any singing that's going on. It's around any liturgical responses, especially during communion. And that helps the hybrid audience feel like, okay, we're still involved. We're not alone here. It's not just me looking at him or her on the screen, but there's actually some interactive worship going on. And those kind of things help. Mind the sound levels and do test runs. So make sure that people can adequately hear, but also make sure that sound is balanced. I don't want to have to hurry up and yank my volume down when the organ starts and then turn it back up because I can't hear pastor preaching, or I can't hear the little old saint that's reading the scripture read it because they're so soft. So we want to do some sound checks and mind the sound levels to make sure. Practice ahead of time. Test your live streams. So during the week, because this is always helpful. You can set live streams on Facebook and YouTube to private so that nobody else is seeing them, but you can go back and watch them, and you can have somebody at home watching them, or someone in the church watching them, so they're not coming up on the church's actual page or YouTube channel or website. And let's practice those live streams to make sure that we're getting good sound levels out of everything that's going to happen on Sunday morning. And the last thing I'll say there is keep people engaged in worship. It's so difficult to focus when hearing only one voice for the entire service. That's kind of why I was nervous about being on webinar mode tonight, because I wanted to see your faces and hear your voices tonight. But keep people engaged in worship. Be creative. I know we all have different sized churches, different worship styles, different contexts, but be creative about how to keep people engaged, involved, and interacting in worship, so they're just not watching and experience the whole time, but everybody is engaged. John Wesley valued so much that the entire body be involved and engaged in worship. And friends, that is something that is going to be key for us. People need to be engaged. They need to have their full mind and body engaged in worship for the worship experience, to go to God with their whole undistracted heart, mind, and soul, but also so that God can speak into that heart, mind, and soul. And in order to do that, we need to give them a way to engage, so that when the word goes forth, that their spirits are receptive and open to receive what God has for them. Amen. What other questions do you have? I'm looking, there are some questions that are coming up. Someone is saying, if you're in a gym, sometimes having some carpet on the floor or rugs out will help absorb that sound. Just test that out. Looking to see what are the questions we have here. Sound that comes from audio board in the sanctuary is not always best in the sanctuary for streaming. That's very correct. If you have somebody, I know some of us are just doing the best we can because we have limited personnel in the church. But it is always a great idea if the same mix for the sanctuary on your soundboard is not the same mix that's going to the live stream. You want to have a targeted mix if you can. If you have the personnel, if you have a sound person, or you have a friend, another pastor that can help you figure that out, it is very, very helpful if the same mix going into the speakers, the main output in your sanctuary, is not the same mix coming from your soundboard to your computer. Sound is too soft. Again, that's where we want to think about having that separate mix or having a different output. So if on my soundboard I have one output going to the speakers to the church, I'm going to have a different output going to the computer. Usually it's going to be the monitor out, and I can control that so that way, because some of us, we're getting soft volume in our live stream because we're not trying to blast people's ears out that are in the sanctuary. By doing that, having separate outputs, one for the speakers in the sanctuary and one for the live stream, then we can control how people are hearing, the level of volume they're hearing on the live stream without blasting everybody in the sanctuary out. Do we have a recommended reverb to use for vocals and band? Ryan, that's going to depend on the kind of board you're using. I like personally most boards or most settings, even if you're using OBS. I see somebody said they're using OBS as well. I prefer a small hall setting, either a medium hall or a small stage setting. I do not like the cathedral settings. They're too bouncy and it's not effective for your live stream. So don't use anything in your effect setting that says like large church or cathedral. You want to use a medium stage setting or a medium hall setting, nothing bigger than that, and keep the gain on that way down, Ryan, so you're not overwhelming people, because what might sound like a little in the sanctuary is sounding like a whole lot when I got my AirPods in on Sunday morning. What type of camera do I use for recording or live streaming instead of just using my phone? Friends, that's going to be kind of different. I have several cameras because I'm in different places every week. I'm what Dr. Martha Simmons calls a portable preacher, and so it depends on where I am. But mainly when I'm live streaming, I'm using a Sony Handycam. There are several different versions. The one I use was actually just discontinued last month. I'll be happy to share the link for the new one we're recommending. It's about 400, actually it's about $300, and it has a direct USB connection, but any kind of video camera, and we'll talk about equipment in a little bit, is going to work as long as you either have a capture device to capture that HDMI connection or a definite USB setting. And later on, I'll talk about, when we get to equipment, remind me, Gregory, and I'll talk about the difference between a webcam setting on your video camera and a direct HDMI capture. Because HDMI capture is always going to take precedent over a webcam setting. You're going to get much better quality, much better frame rates, all of that kind of stuff with an HDMI capture device. And so we'll talk about equipment in a little bit. I don't want to lean too heavy in that. Let me look in the other one. Do I have any recommendation for a good directional mic for the organ? And does the iRig work with 2 microphones? Okay, any recommendation? Bob, I trust Sennheiser and Shure, S-H-U-R-E, more than anybody, but when it comes to directional mics, AKG is one of the best brands that's affordable out there. If you can make it to a Guitar Center or just jump on Sweetwater or Amazon, AKG is probably one of the best brands, better brands that I know that's very affordable when it comes to omnidirectional mics. And so that's the brand I use. Someone asked about the iRig. Teresa, the iRig, there is one, the $50 one I showed you only works for one mic, but you can actually get the next one up. It's called the iRig 2. I know, creative, right? It actually will work for multiple microphones. You can get 2, and there's another one that works for like 2 microphones and a guitar. Any other questions before I get to the next couple of slides here? Thank y'all. Y'all are asking such great questions. And again, thank you for asking questions, because I'm trying to speak to every level of context, but we can get into the specifics of what you need if you ask the question. So thank you so much. Okay. With that in mind, I want to just jump to talking about pre-recording. So some people are saying, what's the benefit of pre-recording? And Lan, why are you talking about pre-recording when we're talking about hybrid worship? Many of us are still doing online worship, and I want to just encourage you, if you are, that's okay. I know everywhere in some areas we're not comfortable yet, and even some places we're not allowed to be back in the sanctuary. Some of us are in a church size, whether and it usually has to do with the amount of space in our sanctuary compared to how many people we average on a Sunday morning, that the capacity limits just aren't going to work for us right now. So some of us are sticking to online a little while longer. And so I just want to encourage you, whatever that is, just kind of hear me out for just a couple of minutes on pre-recording. Pre-recording is a very helpful tool in many cases. If your church is not meeting in person yet, this helps you get more folks involved in worship safely. What do you mean by that? That means that I can get more folks involved in participating in worship by pre-recording, but because everybody doesn't have to be in the sanctuary at the same time. People can even submit segments of worship, and some of you have already done that or you've seen that done, but people can submit segments of worship that are recorded from home. That's a good way to get some of your older saints or people that are in assisted living facilities of any sort that can't participate because they can't come out. That's a good way to get them involved, because you can have somebody help them at wherever they are to record reading a part of this of the service, whether it's the scripture or saying a prayer or anything like that. Those kind of things help you get more folks involved. This helps you be able to record different kind of music elements as well. It also helps you cut out mistakes and lets us be strategic about the timing of service, the length of service, and the design of service. Because we can kind of play with things when we pre-record that we can't always do in a live service. For those, I want to say just something for a moment, for those meeting in person, indoors or outdoors, but we're considering whether we want to keep an online campus engaged. So often, folks, I have seen churches in this day we're seeing one number of churches. You may have been seeing 50 people online. I actually just talked to a pastor last week, was seeing 75 to 100 people online. In person before COVID, and now they're seeing 250 to 300 people that are active. And I don't mean just views on Facebook, 250 to 300 people actively participating and giving in worship now that they've gone virtual. Many of those people are not going to come to the sanctuary when they reopen. And so we need to think about, how do we keep them engaged? And one of those things that you might want to consider is, do we want to have an online campus? Do we want to continue with church online? I'm talking to so many pastors about that day after day. It is such a beneficial thing to consider, because there is going to be a greater portion of the community that has come to and become accustomed to the online worship experience, and they can stay engaged and become their own community and their own portion of the church if we continue with some sort of online church or online campus that is exclusive from the hybrid worship experience, or from the live worship experience, should I say. So just something to consider. And I can say more about that if you have questions about that. But it just helps you engage the online audience through a separate, either whether it's through a pre-recorded service that we're just loading on YouTube or our social media or the website later on, whether we have a church online platform, and I'll talk about what that church online platform looks like later, or whether we're doing even just a separate Zoom service. I know some folk that have older congregations, that everybody are just an older contingent, that everybody can't make it out to worship. In those instances, they're doing a separate service for that crowd, so that they can make sure they're getting people engaged, because a lot of them are still having to call in, or they're still navigating Zoom, or it's really important that that part of the church interacts, and they might not be able to do that while just watching the live stream of the live worship experience. And so having an online separate service allows them to engage in worship and still be involved, and not feel like they're just viewing it because they can't make it like everybody else. So something to really consider in this day. Don't want to put more on you, because the last thing 53 pastors need right now is one more campus. But I want you to think about, this is a way to engage and really build on the capital that we have gained in the work of evangelism and outreach through virtual ministry in the last year. So definitely consider that. Do you have any questions of that? Processing and uploading video can add a significant amount of time. Yes, it does. I've been there. I do it every week. There are churches that I'm producing videos, worship for every week. It's just kind of part of my routine, but we've got it down to a system where the production time only takes an hour, and then the rest of the time, the computer's kind of doing its own thing. When you're a one-man band, so to speak, can this truly be accomplished without getting outside help? I wouldn't try to do, I wouldn't say that you can't do it without outside help, but I would strongly encourage that you get inside help. Figure out what things that you can get somebody to do, even if it's the smallest, tiniest of things in that somebody else can help you with, to make that thing happen and help relieve some of the ownership of it, so that it doesn't just rely on you. We're going to stay about 90 minutes, so I'm coming to a close. I'm going to switch over to a question and answer period in just a little while, okay? So any other questions on that? Okay. Some software recommendations. Folks, we're kind of moving through these topics, so I want to make sure we're just getting those questions in there. Some software recommendations that I want to share with you. If for live streaming, some of you are saying, what's some good live streaming software? What you're seeing here on the screen is a picture of a free software that a lot of churches have come to know. It's one that I learned to use in COVID, called OBS Studio. Very simple to learn. There's so many YouTube tutorials. Works wonderful. It will stream directly into your Facebook, YouTube, into your Restream, whatever kind of software you're using. It'll stream directly, into your website, whatever kind of church online platform you're using. It is absolutely free. We'll let you embed banners on the screen. You can see just a little bit of it here. It kind of cut it off, but I've got like a banner on the screen that says, "Welcome to the hour of prayer." It's my Wednesday night service. Please comment. Sometimes when I'm doing other services, it has the giving information down there. Very easy to use, easy to set up, free software. Another one that's very common is called Restream Dot Io. Again, these are folks that are trying to figure out, how do we get from just clicking the go live button on Facebook on my cell phone to using a computer. that kind of thing, or how do we step up what we've been doing? These are just some easy ways. Restream Dot Io is a really good and very popular software that many churches are using. If you use the free version, it's going to have their watermark on it, and it's going to limit your capability, but certainly it's a very plausible way to do it. Their plans range from free to $15 a month to $41 a month. Again, one of the more popular ones. I know there are a lot of others, but these are just kind of some of the common things. OBS is the one I use every week for most of my stuff. Even our technical director at the annual conference uses it at his church. Direct to Facebook and YouTube. You can still do a lot of what you've been doing, like via Zoom worship and some of these other ways, even with an external camera hooked up, external soundboard hooked up, by just turning the live stream on and turn the computer on and turn the live stream on into Facebook and YouTube and going live. Not always the best way, but certainly works if you need to do it, because it'll let you still do screen sharing and things like that. You just have less options for mobility as far as turning the screens on and off during worship, moving a lot of things around and things, different options that you won't have with a streaming software by going direct to Facebook and YouTube. Church Online platform is something that's powered by Life Church. You probably have heard of Life Church if you're using the U version of the Bible app. They pretty much launched their own online church streaming platform and made it free for churches to use. So you can go to that churchonlineplatform.com if you're interested in how do we do church online, that's powered straight from our website, and people can get that. It's embedded into the website, and people can engage and interact via the chat and connect and all those kind of things. One of the other things that some people are doing, if you're trying to figure out, hey, Lan, we just have an iPad or a Kindle or a cell phone that we're live streaming from, we're looking to kind of do something a little better because it's hard for people to see what's going on. That's one of the things that I would recommend then, is using the Mevo camera. It doesn't always work for every situation, because certainly you're going to have some limited options, but the Mevo camera is a direct live streaming camera. Once you have this set up via an app on your phone or tablet, literally you're going to press a button and it's going to connect directly to the church's YouTube or Facebook channel or Vimeo channel, whichever one you choose, and that thing will just start streaming. Great sound pickup. It has a line on the back that you can run in from the soundboard if you need to, or from a microphone if you need to. And it costs about $250 to $300. So very simple purchase, not ideal if you're using a lot of technology or you have a lot of ensembles and things, but if you're just trying to figure out how do we get out of just the basic from using our cell phone to live stream to using a real camera, this is one of the ways to go. Mevo, M-E-V-O. And so with that, I'm going to get into some software recommendations for all of that and begin to kind of type your questions. Can I provide a PDF list? Yeah, I'll provide that. And Cindy, can we work on getting that out? If I send a list over of all these resources, can we get that out to those that have participated tonight?
That would be great. You can just send it right to me, Lan.
Thank you. And again, if you're trying to catch some of these, feel free to just take a picture of the screen too. But we'll get that listed out to you, because I know sometimes you want to just get this in your mind tonight so you can start looking up things. Some software recommendations that I recommend before we get into our last topic of how to use these things in hybrid worship and what it means to do radical hospitality. Here are just some of my basic top couple of software recommendations. If you're doing in-person worship of any sort, friends, it is so important that we remember that we have people that will want to come to church, that we are called to be an inviting church and welcoming church. In this day and time, no matter where you are theologically, politically, anything like that, we are called to be a welcoming church. I don't care what your theology is, I don't care where on the fence you sit on anything that we're talking about in United Methodism right now. At the end of the day, you can't argue with "Go ye therefore." And so we are called to make disciples. and to reach people for the cause of Christ. And so we want to make sure that in this new season, as people are coming back and we have limited space in our sanctuary because of social distancing, that we are making every effort to make people feel comfortable with coming and that we're leaving room for people to come. And so if you're doing any kind of reservation system or you're figuring out how do we do this, one of the most popular websites that I love is called RSVP.church. It's absolutely free, very simple, customizable, and simple to set up. I set it up for one of our churches in less than 5 minutes. It's just going to ask you, what's the name of your church? What's your name and email? What time are your services? And then it'll give you a URL link that you can email out to folks and say, here's how you sign up to reserve your spot in service on Sundays. Super simple. And you want to make sure that that's advertisable to people so that people know. And one of the things I want to encourage you to make sure you're doing in your services is that you're leaving room for guests. If your sanctuary can only hold 50 people right now with social distancing, do not allow 50 people to sign up for seats. Leave room for walk-ins or have an overflow and have some of your leadership be willing and ready to give up their seat to sit somewhere else or stand or move out of the sanctuary if guests come without making a fuss. The next thing is we want to make sure we know how to keep in touch with people so that when people stop by our online service, when they stop in the sanctuary, that we're finding ways. Most of us have a pew pad or some kind of communication or connect card. I want to encourage you to make sure that you have some digital form of that too. I know we're counting worship in our statistics for Ezra and everything else, that we're counting just worship attendance a lot of times by views and things, but we want people to interact and we want to know they were there and how we can be praying for them and how we can engage in community with them. And the easiest way to do that is through digital connect cards or digital communication cards. At my church, we call it the virtual pew pad. Easiest way to do that is going to google.com/forms and just creating a very simple 3 or 4 question, whatever questions you would have on your communication card, your connect card, name, email address, and some kind of disclaimer saying we're not going to bug you with a lot of emails. We just want to know how to reach you. How can we be praying for you? Are you looking for a church home? Whatever simple questions that you can. And then if you want to, because some of us are doing paperless worship. So you're saying, Lan, how can I do a digital communication card in the sanctuary with that? Have that link posted on the website and just encourage people to take out their phones and do that. At the same time, you can also use a free QR code generator. Just copy the link from that Google form or whatever your form is on your website. Copy that link into a free QR code generator. You can find 1,000 of them on Google and have that printed on big pieces of paper, taped up and posted around the sanctuary so that somebody can just come up and hold their phone up to it, just like they do when they go to any restaurant these days to get the menu and everything else. They can hold their phone up to it, and from there, they can get the communication card that says, this is how to connect. You can also have one for the digital bulletin and stuff like that too. Easiest ways to get people involved in that. I encourage you to use a worship presentation software to get lyrics on the screen so that when you're doing your streaming that people can see what's going on. They can see the lyrics, they can see the liturgy. They're not trying to navigate through a 25-page PDF bulletin of everything. If we have to do that, that's great. But the easier route and the more efficient route is going to be using a worship presentation software. It means not PowerPoint, but an actual worship presentation. Many of you are using things like Easy Worship, Media Shout, Worship LP. Those have been common since the 90s, and I applaud you if you're still using that. ProPresenter is the best one in the market. It costs about $379, which is a steal because it used to be $600. But the one I recommend the most these days is called Worship Extreme. Your church should have a copyright license, no matter what kind of traditional or contemporary music you have. I encourage you strongly to get a copyright license. You can either get one from One License or CCLI. CCLI, though, is the most common one and has a free worship presentation software that comes with it called Worship Extreme. Runs just like any of these others. It's extremely user-friendly. They put out a lot of good templates that you can use in worship. And it's something that's going to be super easy to get plugged into as long as you have your CCLI information. And that just saves time, because then instead of having to create a PowerPoint presentation for worship, now all I'm doing when it comes time to load in that hymn, I don't have to type out 5 slides for Blessed Assurance. I just type out insert song. I just click the button that says insert song and type in Blessed Assurance, and bam, it creates the slides. I'm preaching John 3:16 on Sunday. I don't have to copy and paste the verse. I just open up the scripture option in worship presentation, whichever software I have, type in John 3:16, and bam, it creates the slides. So if you're using PowerPoint, or if you're not using anything, I strongly encourage you to get a worship presentation software. It's going to really help with making sure that your in-person and digital audience is staying connected with what's going on. Some of you are saying, well, Lan, we don't have screens in the sanctuary. That's okay. You can still, if you have a computer and you're streaming, you can still run. I know some people that are still having bulletins in the live sanctuary, and they're running slides on the virtual service. That's okay too. Volunteers can do that. I guarantee there's going to be a volunteer somewhere out there that, that we can convince with some good persuading to click a button and change some slides for us. So let's just think about some ways to do this. Again, I don't want to get into the details of that, because I want to make sure I'm leaving plenty of room for questions. Yeah, somebody said worship extreme as well. These things are all very good things to use. What is the benefit of worship software over PowerPoint? I think I just answered that, but if not, just let me know, Harold. The benefit, again, is that I don't have to keep recreating slides. Every time I'm repeating a song in PowerPoint, I don't have to keep making slides for it. Should we go back and do something or things get out of order, I'm not looking for that slide in PowerPoint, because everything is kind of there and I can just click what I want to see on the screen in worship presentation software. Again, I'm not having to make so many different slides. I'm not having to be creative with templates and designs, because these things come with templates and backgrounds and borders and all that kind of stuff that's already in it. And it just makes it super simple. Most of them also have countdowns built into them. So I can put a 5-minute countdown on the screen before service starts, all that kind of stuff. So you just want to think about those kind of options. How do I keep Facebook and YouTube from knocking us off for the license issue? We have a license, but Facebook has shut down our live stream. Friends, if you have a CCLI license, first and foremost, let me say, make sure that you have a copyright license, but also make sure that you have the streaming add-on to that license. Some of you may have had an automatically renewing CCLI license or one license for years. Please make sure that you have the streaming add-on to that. And then the other way that you want to make sure that you're combating these shutdowns that are coming, because Facebook has just re-updated their algorithm, which means they have software built into the software, into the social media. So does YouTube, that recognizes the melody and tune of music and will flag you for copyright if you don't have your proper copyright information posted. So this means every time that I post our service, it's going to say First United Methodist Church of Freehold. Thanks for joining us today for Sunday, blah, blah, blah. And at the bottom line, it's going to say CCLI streaming number. And anytime slides come up on the screen, I'm posting the CCLI number to that song and having our CCLI number underneath it as well. But I'm making sure that it's in the post. So that way, if they do flag me, that we can go back, and if they do flag you, who asked that question? If they flag you, Sandra or Sandra, that you want to make sure you hit the dispute button when that flag comes up, and then just dispute it and say, we have a copyright streaming license, and hopefully it won't happen again. If it does, then you need to send a message to Facebook support and say, all of our music is covered by our copyright streaming license. But make sure that's intact. Make sure you have the streaming add-on. A lot of people started getting kicked off again somewhere between January and March because they updated the algorithm with Facebook and YouTube, and it wasn't recognizing people that had copyrighted music that they had rights to. So make sure you're posting that information again as well. Just some simple things I want to leave you with before we get into this. If you're using these things and using these kind of softwares and these tools and this equipment in hybrid worship, be intentional about what needs to be seen on screen and what needs to be said in service. So be very intentional about that. Practice, practice, practice. Train multiple people. Pastors, we know you're geniuses, but train someone who can fill in for you. Please try to make sure, I know we have limited personnel and some of us are like we said, a one-man band, but make sure that anybody knows how to do all of these extra jobs that you've picked up on Sunday morning, so that should something happen, if something happens, that somebody else has pick up the reins. And because, friends, let's be honest, too many pastors are facing burnout and fatigue right now. And so we want to start putting in a little bit of extra effort and energy into making sure that we're making room to give ourselves a break, so that with all these new things we're doing in worship, that it's not relying on us to be there 52 Sundays a year. Take a break, please. Okay. And that comes with figuring out, how do we teach anybody else how to do what it is that we're doing on Sunday mornings. Last thing is keep service interesting and interactive. Figure out ways to keep this stuff. Sometimes, let's be honest, the spark has gone. Some of us are saying, I got calls from probably about 40 pastors in the first quarter of the year that says, Lan, the live stream numbers have plateaued and are slowly starting to decline. Worship is becoming boring again. We punched it up last year when we had to go online. Now it's getting boring. What do? Let's figure out ways to keep service interesting and interactive. And let's just take some time, just take 2 minutes in your day to just start jotting down some ideas and think about, what can we do? What can we try? And let's do some iteration, because sometimes you're going to try new things in worship. They're not going to work. They're going to feel awkward, those kind of things. But iteration says we're going to try it again. And we're going to set a culture for iteration and failure in the church. Let me just say that again. It is healthy in this time, especially as we're trying to be creative about worship and we're experimenting with new technology, that you set a culture in the church within the leadership and the laity for iteration and failure. That says, I'm giving room, that we're going to try some new things. We're trying some new creative things, some new elements in worship, some new ways to get people involved, some new technology, some new equipment, and it may not work, but iteration says we're going to try it again another way. We're going to keep tweaking it. And after a few tries, if it's still not working, then we're not going to just give up. We're just going to put that one method or mode down, and we're going to pick up another one and say, let's try something, because we can't just revert back to what we've been doing. Folks, the church that we were having before is no longer happening. We need to figure out a way to press forward, and we need to keep people interested and interactive. And that means we're going to have to do experimenting, means we're going to have to be creative. And that means we're going to have to set a culture that says it's okay if we fail, and we're going to iterate. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about, and you can start asking your questions there, but the last thing I want to talk about is just, how do we engage people? One thing is keeping a good rotation of participants, finding a way to allow people to participate online when possible, so they don't feel pressured to be in person, which means sometimes we're going to have people pre-record. We're still doing that. My church is live streaming from the sanctuary, but we've still got the liturgists that are recording from home every week. They just send the video in, and our video guys, my congregation, by the way, that where I'm a candidate for ministry and licensed local pastor, is only about 80 people, 60 on a normal day, 80 on a packed day. But we have still a lot of our liturgists that are rotating are just sitting in the video during the week, and we play that on the screen in the sanctuary and in the live stream. Our sound and video crew just learned how to do this in the last 6 months, and all of them are over 65. Just took some training and learning, and they're doing it. Use some more interactive components in worship, in small groups, Bible studies. Be mindful that we're not encouraging as much singing, and this is more so for my New Jersey people, as much as, and we're trying to keeping distancing. So not doing that is affecting people psychologically a great deal. Not being able to sing like they used to, and not being able to sit close and hug and pass the peace and shake hands like they used to, is affecting people psychologically. And so we want to try to find creative ways to keep people interacting in worship. We need both the familiar and the fresh as the church becomes more inviting. Again, do a self-assessment even in the high season. I suggest you doing some kind of self-assessment on your preaching, on the entire worship service quarterly. Make sure that your service in that section, in that self-assessment, is including all the generations. Be ready for guests. Update the website. Update the website regularly. And update, for those of us that still have marquees out front, update the marquee. I preached at a church back in August last year that still had Advent on the marquee out front. God bless you if that's you. Update the marquee out front and make sure it tells people how they can engage with you online and in person. Make it personal. Let's make sure service is relevant and personal, but let's not overdo it. Let's make sure that we're being intentional about what's happening in worship. And the last thing I want to talk about, again, in that just kind of ties us into hospitality and how do we do it in the new day. This formatting on this slide is a little weird, so let me just try to make sure we're getting this here. Be mindful of seekers and newcomers. Welcome people often in the beginning, middle, and end. We talked about that already. Shorten service, but make sure it's still meaningful and worshipful. Figure out how can we keep in touch. So that's going to come from your digital communication card, your pew pad, and making sure that the safety protocols are clear and inviting, but not frightening people. So let people know that we're practicing safety, but let's not scare folks. So let's make sure that we got still inviting atmospheres. That means making sure our signage doesn't have don't signs and no things. We're going to say please, please do, not do not. We don't want that. We want to also make sure that we're saving seats for guests. Again, one of the good things to use in our language online is use words like confirmation instead of reservation. And instead of saying, make a reservation for service next week, why don't you just say, we'd like you to confirm with us that you're going to be here next week. That's more inviting. That feels less exclusive. Have extra gear, extra sanitizer, extra mask, church brochures, prepackaged. Partner with the local hospital or medical office if possible. Have plenty of welcome signs. I mentioned that about the prepackaged extra gear. One church I preached for outside, or sang for outside last summer, when I walk up, they had partnered with the local hospital and they had a little baggie that had a mask in it, sanitizer, a brochure about the church, a Band-Aid, and some information about the community already packaged. And the hospital provided most of that for them except for the print materials. Have plenty of welcome signs with instructions on where to go, what to do with your kids, how to find the bathroom, what we're doing with safety, and make sure that they're inviting signage. Again, we've talked about that, so I'm not gonna get into a lot of that. Some of this stuff I've kind of covered. That's what happens when I'm talking a lot on my own. Find ways to celebrate. Find ways to celebrate. So this is just one of the last things I want to talk about with hospitality and engaging people. Find ways to celebrate in your service. I know we're doing hybrid worship, but find ways to still be joyful and keep people interactive and involved in celebration. Know your onboarding process for newcomers and new volunteers. So welcome people to come in and don't burn out everybody else. Try to switch it up. Some of your volunteers, your sound folks, that person that's helping you with the slides, the organist, everybody else, they're burning out. They're just as tired as you are. So let's figure out some creative ways. That might mean 1 or 2 Sundays in the month. Worship doesn't look like it always does because we're giving people a break. We're training new people. We're trying other things so that people are getting some rest and we're not burning people out for the sake of worship. And be thinking about how big days in the church, and how we can still make them inciting. Let's not just say, I'm hearing a lot of churches saying, well, because of COVID, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't have the rally day, we can't have the picnic, we can't do that. Let's think about some ways we can be creative about the big things in the life of the church. Sometimes it means we need to create new big things in the life of the church that we can do safely and welcome and invite the community, and how we can keep those things big but safe. I know our time is coming short, so I want to make sure I'm kind of getting all of this. And that's just, we've covered all of that. What questions do you have? Any other questions? Am I seeing any other questions? Can I define interactive? Yes. By interactive, I mean people are engaging in worship, finding a way for them to do something, to participate in worship. Some of us aren't comfortable yet with congregational singing. So that means we need to figure out something else. Maybe it's that we're saying the Lord's Prayer every week now so that people can be involved in that. or we're finding ways, like when we get ready to do prayer time, that everybody just calls out a name or a word, or during the sermon that we're inviting people to interact that way. Sometimes it means we're asking people to bring something to worship, like a donation. We're going to have Canned Goods Sunday on first Sundays, Sock Sunday on second Sundays, Gloves Sunday on third Sundays, and sanitizer and cleaning supplies on fourth Sundays. Just finding ways to get people involved and let people know that aren't there, that they can still drop stuff off. And even if that means we're having hybrid worship and we're asking people, hey, say a name or say something out loud in service, that we've got somebody that's interacting with folks that are doing that as well on the live stream. Hope that kind of covered it. Yes, online hosts are wonderful. We call them at my church Facebook and Zoom ushers. Can I briefly explain what I mean by an online campus? Yeah, sure. Online campus, that means some churches, when we say online campus, that means we're recognizing that there's a community that is engaged with us now online that will not be able to come to the sanctuary. And we don't want them to just feel like they're just onlookers and kind of bystanders of what's happening in person. And so we're now creating an actual intentional community with them, that we're doing small group with them. We're engaging them in service. We're engaging them in community efforts, those kind of things. They're having their own prayer time, and they're engaged, and they have something that's targeted directly towards them. Best way to show worship slides on live stream is going to be through that streaming software, Heather. That's where we're going to be using like OBS or Restream or something that's going to let us toggle back and forth. Some of us are even going to do that simply by using Zoom, where we have the camera facing in the sanctuary, and we're doing screen share, and we're able to do both of those things. Is there a license for worship video songs off YouTube? Absolutely not. We may not use YouTube videos. That is something, unless it specifically says royalty free, which probably less than 5% of videos on YouTube will say that, we may not use any music off YouTube or Spotify. That is strictly forbidden by our copyright licenses. There are a lot of churches that are sharing their music, though, that have worship music out there. Life Church is one of them. If you'll go to the G&J UMC website, that's gnjumc.org, and go to worship. So you can actually go to gnjumc.org/worship. Cindy, if you'll type that in, and I'll put that on the resources page too. I actually have a growing library of videos that you can use with your streaming license. It's up to about 180 videos that I and several folks around our conference have put together, and churches from all around the world literally are using now. In almost every jurisdiction of the annual conference, and in a couple other continents too, that you can use those videos. Again, there are other churches that are sharing that, but we may not use YouTube videos. That's one thing that's kind of strictly forbidden by our copyright license. That website is, do I know how to do this? To all panelists and attendees. My webpage on the G&J website is gnjumc.org/worship. Again, there you'll find a video library, and now there's a table of contents where you can search as well. Video library of about 180, and we record music several times during the month and upload those videos of hymns, traditional music, contemporary music, global praise music, stuff from the Faith We Sing and Worship and Song as well. As well, you'll see a growing library of sermons that you can use too. Some for whole series, and some just one-off for certain occasions, are just kind of all general purposes. About half of them are me. Some of them are from other preachers from around the conference and around the world. Jen Williams has a couple that we've used as well, and that you can give yourself a break and actually use that sermon. Some people are using them even in person, in the in-person worship, where the pastor needs to take off and we don't have another speaker, a lay speaker, or anybody to fill in, and they're playing that video sermon. Please use that. Someone's saying as long as the music is at least 75 years old, it should be okay to use. Actually, the law says public domain is 25 years old. The trouble you're going to find out, though, with that, Gregory, is that most of the stuff on YouTube, because YouTube is not 25 years old, most of those things are an arrangement that is within the public domain window, which means it's no longer public domain, because the arrangement that's recorded online is not bound by that public domain copyright. And so it's not safe. That's the easiest way to get your live stream shut down, by playing a video that's coming from YouTube or Spotify. Any other questions? Friends, if you go to that G&J website, the worship page, there's an easy way to contact me. Again, I'm going to send over a list of all these resources to Cindy tomorrow so she can send to you. But if you have questions directly for me, you can go to that G&J website. We are in this together, and I'm happy to support you any way I can. So feel free to shoot me any questions, follow-up questions that you have. I see a couple that are coming on. No, okay, we've got all those questions. But feel free to shoot me any questions that you have. I want to just leave you with a closing thought and word, and then we're gonna go on. Sorry if I opened the fire hydrant. I know it was a lot of information, but we try to cover as much as we can in a little bit of time. But certainly, I wanted to give you all the information that we could. Cindy, in that resource list as well, I'm going to send you a link to the presentation, to the PowerPoint presentation, so that folks can see these slides. I've also got some additional slides in there. If you have questions about CDC rules, about the healthy way to do singing and things, I've got some research in there as well. So that'll all be included. But I just want to close our time with this thought from Saint Teresa, if you don't mind, and we're going to wrap up. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have following up from email. But if you'll just, wherever you are, just stop and pause what you're doing and just read this and receive this into your spirit. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing away, but God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. Whatever your context is, whatever your church size is, whatever your experience is, whatever your background is, please understand that God can and will take care of you. And all things are possible through God. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. And so let me close with just a word of prayer, and I'm going to let you go. Thank you. I know we've gone a little over time, but I tried to answer all the questions, and I'm so grateful to be with you folks, and I'll continue answering questions. But let me just leave you with a brief word of prayer, and I'll let Cindy close us out tonight. God bless every person that's on this call tonight, every person, every household, every family, and every church, every ministry, God, tonight, in the name of Jesus. God, let your spirit just pour back into them, that they would be equipped and energized for what it is that you're calling them to do in this new season. God, we are tired. We are intimidated. We are burnt out. We're tired of reading the news every day, but we understand that there is still work to do. And we understand, just as the hymn writer said, that we have a charge to keep, a God to glorify, and an ever-dying soul to save. So I pray, oh God, tonight, that you would pour back into these people, that you would refill them in the Holy Ghost tonight, God, that you would recharge them, that you would challenge and invigorate them, just energize them for what's to come, that they would have new energy, new strength, new wind, new will, and new ideas for what it is that lies ahead. At the end of the day, you get all the glory and leave us the blessing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Friends, thank you so much. I'm grateful that you've given me this time, and I hope we can get together again soon.
And thank you so much for being with us tonight and giving of your time. Great information that you gave to us, and we really, really appreciate it. This webinar is being recorded as well, so if you missed anything, I'll be sending that out to everyone, and you can review it and get things that you might have missed. So thank you all for attending. Everyone have a great night and be blessed.